heavyweight in the world, Deontay Wilder, arguably the hardest puncher in history of the sport, has come under fire for some comments he made ahead of this weekend's title fight against Dominic Breazeale. Take a listen to this.
Hey, Dominic Breazeale asked for this. I didn't go seek him, he seeked me. So if it comes, it comes. This is a brutal sport. This is not a gentleman's sport. I keep saying this is not a gentleman's sport. We don't ask to hit each other in the face, but we does anyway. And you can ask any doctor around the world, and he'll tell you the head is not meant to be hit. Anybody can go. And on this particular time, we have bad blood against each other. This is the only sport where you can kill a man and get paid for it at the same time. It's legal. So why not use my right to do so?
Okay, that statement has drawn some sharp criticism from the WBC, and nobody better to come in and talk about this than Max Kellerman, the face of boxing on ESPN. We also have Matt Barnes, who's a fan of boxing. First of all, you actually heard from Deontay on your show First Take earlier this week where he was talking about this. What's just your general reaction to what he's been saying?
This is nothing new. Roberto Duran, when he knocked out Ray Lampkin, lightweight title defense in the 70s, they told him afterward, they had to take him to the hospital. Duran said, that's nothing. If I was in shape, they'd have to take him to the morgue. Mike Tyson knocks out Jesse Ferguson. Right hook to the body, right uppercut. So, Jesse Ferguson, right uppercut to the head. Ferguson falls like a tree. Mike, what were you trying to do with that shot? He goes, I heard that if you hit the nose just right, you can push the nose bone into the brain. That's what he was trying. Mike Tyson was trying to do that. So let's not pretend right now that people aren't more interested in this fight now with Deontay Wilder. And you weren't wrong when you said he's arguably the hardest puncher in the history of boxing. His right hand is up there with Lennox Lewis's right hand, Ernie Shaver's right hand, Tyson's uppercuts. He may be the hardest hitter shot for shot, ever. Now, Suleiman, the president of the sanctioning body you mentioned, I hate the sanctioning bodies, and he's president for life just like his father before him.
Right.
But I like my personal interactions with him, and he is being the adult in the room. Good for him. Let's not take it there, right? However, this is a sport of independent contractors. They're all going to behave how they're going to behave. If the market rewards his behavior, he will continue to behave that way.
Matt, your thoughts, because as a fan of the sport, you kind of liked this.
They may act like they don't like it, but like Max said, this has just sold more tickets, more pay-per-view watches, and the history of boxing has always been self-promotion and hyping the fight up and giving the crowd what they want. Do you want an athlete saying, I want to kill another athlete? Probably not, but at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be tuning in, and I know a lot more people are going to be tuning in for that fact.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't see this a lot, and it seems like, Max, that there's a certain line that a lot of these boxers do sort of walk. This didn't cross the line at all in your mind, just overall.
Well, you would rather, listen, as an adult, as a functioning member of society, you would like people not to speak this way, even if it's in competition. And he's within his rights to say, look, my job is to do X. If I'm also trying to do Y, but it's within the rules, and you still pay me to fight and I'm licensed, tough if you don't like it. As an adult myself and a father of children, no, I would like him not to behave that way.
Thank you.
But let's not pretend that there's not an appeal. Yeah. For example, people listening to this today, I believe will be more likely to tune in than less likely. So whether or not we applaud appealing to our baser instincts, let's not pretend it's not a factor here in the marketing of the fight.
This is the shot in the arm. Boxing needs this. MMA is the new combat sport, but for purists like me, I love boxing, and I think they need a shot in the arm every once in a while, and people like a good trash-talking match before the bout. Obviously, there's bad blood, and now we're going to be tuning in tomorrow night.
By the way, real quick, Deontay Wilder, people are getting to know him. Anthony Joshua is one of the biggest stars in worldwide sports, undefeated heavyweight champ, right? Tyson Fury, who fights here on ESPN, also undefeated, lineal heavyweight champ, fought to a draw with Wilder, outboxed him the whole way, picked himself up off a 12th round knockout, knocked down barely to get a draw. The heavyweight division is white hot right now.
Yeah, the host of Max on Boxing right here, also First Take. Let's bring in Stephen A., who's listening in. Stephen A., just your opinion on what Wilder said in the state of boxing, how it relates.
Well, first of all, the subject's a waste of my time. And the reason why it's a waste of my time, and it should be a waste of everybody's time, is because the real issue here is not what he said. It's that the WBC says we want to investigate it. This is before the rebuke. So my point is to lean off of what Max and Matt said. You're talking about guys, you get in the ring, it's a violent sport. You know that one punch could put somebody to sleep. You understand all of that. You heard Max articulate what Mike Tyson once said, along with what Roberto Duran once said. We understand that comes with the sport. Now, you can definitely decry or really have a problem with what Wilder said. And if that was the subject, that would be different. The reason why this is news is because the WBC said we're going to investigate. What the hell is there to investigate? What's the investigation about? He said what he said. You agree with it or you don't agree with it. You think it was appropriate or inappropriate. And that's it. To sit up there and say that there's going to be an investigation, what exactly are you going to do to Deontay Wilder just because he said those words? Unless he's talking about breaking the rules, the fact of the matter is if he goes into the ring, you're going to want and expect him to throw that right hand. Max, educate us about what would happen if Deontay Wilder walked into the ring and refused to throw the right hand and just ran around the ring and didn't throw punches. What would happen then? They'd probably penalize him and withhold his check because he didn't show up to do his job. So what sense does it make for the WBC to sit up there and say it's an investigation? You can sit up there and rebuke what he says, totally understand that, and it would be appropriate to do that. But to lead into this story, meaning they did the last couple of days by saying we're going to investigate what happened here, is the most idiotic thing in the world. There is no investigation necessary. He came on First Take on national television and said what he said. You either like it or you don't, period.
Right. What do you investigate? We got a magnifying glass to the transcript. Exactly. He said what he said. Exactly Stupid. Right. To your point about Deontay Wilder, what would happen if he didn't throw the right hand? This is the point about boxing. It is both the reason it's become increasingly marginalized, one of the reasons in mainstream American sports why it's been pushed to the margins, because it is barbaric. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But it's also its appeal. So when people talk about concussion protocol in football, and that's kind of incidental to the real point, which is to move the ball up the field, concussion is the point in boxing. You're watching Deontay Wilder to see if he can concuss his opponent. That's why people show up.
That's exactly the point I wanted to get to here, and I'm glad, Max, you sort of took it there by yourself, which is to say that in all the other sports where this has always been a big part of it, they have stressed safety in auto racing. They have stressed safety to the point that it has turned some people off in football. Boxing now, to embrace that, is there not a concern on your part that that is a dated perspective, that is a way we used to view sports that people are not as comfortable with anymore, and that one of the problems boxing has is not to embrace its sweet science piece and instead lean so heavily on this violence and danger?
Well, sure. I mean, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, for example, when boxing took on the Marquis of Queensberry rules, gloves and all this stuff, and made it more civilized, the referee would break you, couldn't follow up on a concussed opponent. Actually, what wound up happening is a guy gets hurt, he can beat the referee's count, 8 seconds later, he's fighting again, and against a guy who's trained to take his head off, right? And what wound up happening, because of that sustained kind of punishment, is a lot of punch-drunk fighters later in their careers, whereas MMA, for example, which appears even more barbaric to many, precisely because you can follow up on your advantage and hurt a helpless opponent, the match ends very quickly. And so far, though we'll see in the future, we see fewer lasting effects because it's not the same kind of sustained beating. So I would say, yes, you're right. Kind of marketing the barbarism is a double-edged sword for boxing. And yet the kind of measures that are sometimes taken to make it less that way, in fact, have the opposite of their intended effects.
Stephen A., I've got 30 seconds left. I'll give them to you. It's a final thought.
I concur with Max.
That won't happen. That won't happen in 7 minutes. First take in 7 minutes. That won't happen.
All right. These guys are 6 minutes away from continuing this conversation and many more on First Take. Stephen A., thank you. Max, thank you. Have a terrific show. We'll see you guys in just a few minutes here on ESPN. Meanwhile, Monday morning, we hope you'll get up with us again, 8 Eastern, while everyone follows Tiger at the PGA Championship. Are people sleeping on the next Tiger? Ooh. Plus, Richard Jefferson, Jay Will, Tom Thibodeau in studio breaking down the NBA playoff action, and Jalen live from Portland. Get up Monday, 8 Eastern, ESPN.